All right. Welcome everyone to Gone Remote, presented by Validity. I'm your host, Meagan DeMenna, Senior Marketing Manager here at Validity, and I'm really excited about today's show, How to Stay Connected, Advice from Community and Social Media Experts. I think by now we're all feeling it, introverts and extroverts alike. It's been said that we shouldn't be saying social distancing, but rather physical distancing. Now more than ever, we need the social interaction. We need to be reminded of the good in people and the love that is out there. We need that human-to-human connection. And community leaders are exactly the people to facilitate and keep these connections alive. These leaders are listening and communicating daily with the people your organization is trying to connect with. Often, they're the first interaction your audience has with your brand. They are the voice of your company, and they can leave a lasting impression. So today, we wanted to ask the experts if they've seen community change over the last few weeks, how they stay authentic, suggestions for listening and responding to the community, and more. So it is my pleasure to introduce Monina Wagner, Social Media and Community Manager at Content Marketing Institute, Kevan Lee, VP of Marketing at Buffer, Neal Schaffer, President of PDCA Social, and Martin Lieberman, Director of Content Marketing at the RepTrak company. Thanks for joining us, everyone. How are you doing?
Good.
Good.
How are
Great.
you?
Doing good. I'm excited to have you guys here. So let's jump right in. Each of you manages, and in some cases has built different communities. So tell us a little bit about your community and some of the changes you've noticed over the last few weeks. Monina, let's start with you.
Thank you, and thanks for having me here. So I build community over at Content Marketing Institute. So our community is really a diverse group of content marketers. We interact in person at our events, but we're also a digital online community. So they may be as our blog contributors, or we really do a lot in Slack, or we're on social media like weekly on our Twitter chats. So this really, the pandemic has really had us seeing a lot of changes in our membership. So we've had people who they've seen an increase in work because their industry is directly affected by this. But we've also seen people who've seen projects that have been halted and they're being furloughed, and it's such a sad and heartbreaking thing to see. So we're getting questions that sometimes we have never even approached, we've never heard of before. So as a community manager, really what my job is to be able to answer those questions and to make them feel comforted that there's someone who's going to try and help them find those answers.
Love that. I would actually love to hear some of the questions if you want to share maybe a little later, or I'm just interested to see how things are changing. So Kevan, what are some changes you've noticed?
Yeah, so at Buffer, we're a social media management product. So we have a community of customers. We also have a community of audience members who interact with us through Slack and social media. And a lot of the folks that we serve are small businesses. We have some publishers, some agencies, some direct-to-consumer brands. So we've really seen a variety of different responses and reactions. There's some industries that are very essential and needed at the moment. And so they are looking for ways to do even more on social media. There's other industries that are struggling and having a hard time and wondering how to live with smaller budgets or needing to furlough or lay off folks. So we have really taken more of a personal approach with our communication with that community, just because we are seeing so many different needs and questions at the moment. But we're grateful for having so many voices in there kind of sharing these different perspectives. I think it's helped us understand the big picture of all the different things happening out there.
Great. Neal, what shift have you seen?
Yeah, so both for my company and the clients that we help in their communities, as well as just the community for my personal brand, I published a book, March 17th, not the best time to do that. But obviously people are in need for various reasons, and they're looking for help. And I think it's a great time for companies to actually step up and help them in any way they can. I think one of the things that we've seen, that I've recommended to my clients, and they've seen great results, is really customer education and providing some sort of virtual experience just to let them know they're there to help, they're there to answer questions, and just showing empathy for the community, I think are right now the key takeaways. I also have clients that one can't ship product because they're not an essential company here in California. Another provides a remote workforce efficiency software program for teams. So we're going as aggressively as possible with their marketing, as you can imagine. So it really varies. And even in, my book being about influencer marketing, I know of one particular influencer marketing company that, recently laid off 30% of their staff. This was not public information. I found out through friends. But on the other hand, there's still a need to educate your community and to engage with them. And there are influencers who are still finding, needs for that role, and they're filling that as well. So it really is varied. But I think the common theme really is, people need you, and your business needs to show up and lend a helping hand in all these varieties of ways that they can.
Love that. Yeah, Martin, actually, I saw you published an article on how companies are shifting their products and just what they're doing in this time. But I'd love to hear what you've noticed in your community, if there's any shifts.
Well, sure, for sure. So our business is focused on corporate reputation and how the world perceives your business. So, and our community is composed primarily of communications professionals. Earlier in the year, last year, we were talking a lot about purpose, about corporate responsibility, and topics like that. And I would say, not surprisingly, over the past 2 months or so, those elements of the business have really become the core of a lot of the focus of a lot of businesses that we work with, especially paying attention to your stakeholders, like your employees, especially and the community in which you operate. So, we've seen a lot more collaboration, a lot more communication about, and not always on social media, about the best ways to respond to the crisis. And so the interest in content we've been sharing around that topic, around doing the right thing right now, has really increased. And so our community has become active in different ways, but all around the concept of doing good for the community and their stakeholders.
Love that. So that's kind of talking about listening to community. I think that's a perfect segue. And Monina, you actually alluded to this a little bit before about the new questions you're seeing, but so listening has always been a part of leading a community. So have you guys changed the way that you're listening, and what have you seen? Well, Monina, I'd actually like to go back to the questions that you're seeing and how maybe that's changing the way you're listening and responding.
Definitely. Some of the questions we're seeing may just be like personal brand. So they're not necessarily content marketing related, but it's how content marketing can help the marketers within our community. So personal branding has been a question that we've been asked. Really, what skills of a content marketer are being looked for now by corporations, by companies. So those are some of the questions that we've been hearing, but we've also been hearing about how they need to pivot their content marketing strategies. So, how the workflows have changed now that they're a remote team. So these are things where we may have touched upon them in the past, but they haven't been so specific about, remote or about the pandemic, post-pandemic. So those are some of the questions that we're seeing now.
Great. So Neal, how has this changed the way you're listening to your community?
Obviously, I think we're all listening a little bit more deeper, looking for clues, but I think it's really, it's affected the communication with that community when they talk to us. That has been the biggest impact here, of having the empathy. And I think, going off what Monina was saying, there's definitely just this, what we call the digital transformation, which is still happening, is only accelerating with this. So I also hear from a lot of marketers, about those skills. How do I learn more about digital? How do we become more digitally proficient? And I think the same for companies, right? Not just in terms of how do they digitize their product and service, but also from a marketing perspective, how do they do more with digital? Now that obviously the world is, that transformation is only accelerating. So those seem to be the areas that we see when we listen to our customers.
Perfect. Kevan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been most important for me and my team is making customer insights and customer conversations accessible to as many people as possible on the team. So how can they get into those conversations? How can they read other people's conversations? How can we kind of be involved together? So we've taken a channel approach in a lot of ways with that. So we have our customer support channels. So making sure all the marketing team has access to those inboxes so they can see what people are saying. We have a type form that's linked to from a COVID page on our website, and all those responses go to our team so we can see what people are asking us there. And we've even gone into paid a little bit to run different campaigns with different messaging so we can see what people are interested in and what's resonating most. For instance, at Buffer, Do people care about building their brand on social media today? Do they care about saving money with a social media tool? Or do they care about adapting social media strategies? So running ads with each of those messages just to see, what's top of mind for folks and how can we best help, I think it's been really illuminating for us.
That's a great idea. And we've all sort of touched on this as well. Things are definitely becoming more personal. How are you personally connecting with your digital communities? How are you seeing that personal connection evolve? Martin, let's start with you.
Well, I mean, I feel like having a human voice has always been critical, but no more so than now, when we're all needing to be empathetic and show that we're all human. And, social is so important when it comes to communicating on a person-to-person basis. When you receive information, you receive it individually at your phone or at your laptop or whatever. You're not a mass of people. So, making sure that you are communicating one-to-one is so critical right now. One of the things that's really excited me, I think, in the past month and a half or so, is just how much of communication has gone. And I know everything is online. When I say online, I mean social media. But just how much of conversation has gone offline to FaceTime, to phone calls, and Zoom. I know Zoom is online, but I consider Zoom kind of not to be a social media thing. It's just a great way to actually see people and interact with people. And I think those kinds of things are so critical right now because, we're all remote. A lot of people are on their own, and, people want to know that folks are out there and we're all in this together. And so, you can't just be on autopilot, basically. So community efforts like this, community managers, people like Monina, they've just become so important right now. So yeah, I think personalization of content and social interaction is just so critical right now.
Great. Monina, what are your thoughts?
What I really love about digital is accessibility, right? So it can be real time when you want it to be real time, but you can also have it where you can watch a recorded webinar or you can catch up by scrolling through tweets. But I'm feeling right now where we're seeing more the personal side is that we need to be on all the time, because you might be homeschooling children and not able to attend the online book club that you normally do, or you might be waiting for your grocery delivery, so you're not able to take part in the weekly Twitter chats that we hold. So I think we're getting to know our community even deeper because we now know about their family. We now know what they're looking into, and I think really it's really just solidified that connectedness that our members have, where we want to collaborate with each other, but we also want to commiserate with each other. And, and right now, especially, we really want to serve the world that we're a part of. So it's been really refreshing to be able to see this side of our community.
That's amazing. Kevan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, hearing collaborate and commiserate is a cool way of putting it. One of the things we found useful is not everyone wants to talk about how much the world is upside down at the moment. Like maybe they just want to look at memes and things. So we've created different channels and different opportunities to lighten the mood if people want to. I think it goes back to the previous question of listening. Like what does your community want in the moment, or even on a personal level, like what do people need here and now? It's 100% true that our home lives are kind of bleeding over into work life a lot. And so I think that's a great point about whatever content you have, making sure it can be consumed whenever that person is able to. If it's a live session that you're doing, can you also record it and make it available to view afterward? Can you transcribe things that are on audio or video and put it into words so people can read it at their leisure when they're in the mood for it too? So I think just kind of chopping up the stuff that you used to do all at once into these consumable batches can be really helpful for our communities at this time.
I think that's great advice. So brands have always had a challenge to stay authentic. I think that this is even more of a challenging time. People don't want to seem too opportunistic. So how do you suggest to stay authentic? Neal, let's start with you.
I think it's all part of that personalized conversation. I know one tool that I use called Tailwind. This was literally right when California went on lockdown, I believe around March 19th, just a little site message coming from the CEO. Hey, we want to know how COVID-19 is affecting your business. And an open email or an open message from the CEO saying they just want to have that conversation. So we've seen brands do this: site message, email communication, and obviously, just showing up live most of the time, Instagram lives, Facebook lives, to show your community the face of your company, but also to be there, even if you don't have an agenda, just to be there to not only answer questions, but to have that casual talk about what's going on, even have a laugh, but just to show up for your community. I think that's really in a live format. Obviously, touching upon what everybody else said, making that accessible to everybody else, because now we're bombarded with live broadcasts, it seems, every day. But just showing up and making yourself accessible, and being true to your brand and being true to who you are as a human, and really being there to help people.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Right now, we've heard this a few times, but when people are asking, how are you doing? They really do mean it right now. Hopefully they meant it before, but now it's on just a completely different level. So Monina, what are your thoughts here?
I think with being authentic, it's really reminding, and not so much even CMI, but really just brands reminding themselves that they are not always their audience. So I have to remember that while I'm a member of the community, I may not be thinking the way that the greater community is thinking. So it's really just kind of being there, so everyone has said, but being empathetic with what they're going through, and kind of reassuring that we're going to be there as this progresses. So, my favorite example is that a few weeks ago, I wanted to host like a coffee break, right? Just 10 to 15 minutes, no COVID-19 talk, just a time for us to get around the virtual water cooler and just talk. And once, of course, we had it, conversation still steered that way. But fast forward to this week, and our community is now saying, now we think we're ready for a little bit something else. And I think that's the way you stay authentic, is just really being on their same level and just following their lead. And when you do that, then they really understand that, you're one of them.
Awesome. Kevan, Neal, do you have anything to add on authenticity? Or actually, sorry, Martin and Kevan.
Sure. I mean, I can say, I always try to write like I talk, whether it's my personal, social, or my brand stuff that I'm doing for my employer. And I always think about how will a post that I'm going to put out there, how will any kind of content that I put out there appear in the context of the social feed when there's so much other stuff about coronavirus and all the other news out there. And also, if I saw a post, how would I engage with it? Would I at all? So I think this time in particular, it's really important to do a personal gut check before you hit post on anything, because when you're writing something, does it sound like you? Is it authentically, genuinely you? Is it going to stick out in a bad way in a feed? And would you engage with it? I think that those are really important questions to ask before you do anything right now on social.
Yeah, those are great questions.
Yeah, I think one of the things we've done with authenticity is to admit that we don't have all the answers, which is hard to admit when you're a social media company and people are asking you for social media answers. So much of it is up in the air right now. So just owning that and being authentic, like we're figuring this out alongside you all, is something that we've been trying to embrace in recent weeks.
Great. So things are a little crazy right now. How are you guys maintaining a sense of positivity in your communities? Kevan, your buffer has just done a great job of this over the years. So I'd love to hear from you first.
Yes, it is an interesting time to have positivity as one of your cultural values, for sure. So I think the angle that we've taken with it is pulling hope out of positivity. So at times, like, positivity isn't something you can just turn on all the time. Like, there's moments where you might not feel positive or things might be hard for you, and that's totally okay. That kind of goes back to the point of authenticity before. Like, we want people to feel all the feelings, and however you feel is fine. But in terms of positivity, I think we have tried to embrace this forward-looking, hopeful sentiment whenever possible. So pulling out community stories of people doing great work, customer stories of essential workers who are making a difference, or businesses who are thinking creatively to work through the crisis or help their communities. So finding little notes of hope and encouragement like that. And I think we also have a chance to embrace positivity in the way that we communicate with our community. So if we are on a live video or if we're chatting with someone, just something as simple as having a smile on your face, even if you're talking about some harder things, I think that connection can feel very positive to folks. And then the way that we phrase things, like we try to be helpful and try to be there for people, which if it comes from this place of wanting to do right by them and wanting to have a positive influence in their life, I think that theme of positivity will come through even in the midst of hard times.
Wonderful. Martin, what are your thoughts here?
I totally love what Kevan just said. But so our company's purpose is focused around the idea that doing and saying the right thing is good business. And in this crazy, stressful time, we've made a really concerted effort to fill our social feeds, specifically Twitter and LinkedIn, with positive examples of companies doing and saying the right thing. And it's worked. We have seen significantly increased social metrics right now. People are really responding well to stories of companies repurposing their resources and creating things for healthcare workers and donating money and taking care of their employees. We've just been sharing these stories. Thankfully, there are so many of them to share. And so we've been doing a lot of that. And we've also been soliciting feedback and suggestions on what other people are seeing from the business community that are, people are doing the right thing. And we've received a lot of feedback, not even on social media. People are telling us that they really appreciate the messaging and the examples, and have given them good things to strive for and to do themselves. So, the great news is that there are a lot of positive stories to be shared right now in the business community. And so we've just been really happy to share them.
Yeah, I've actually seen some of those stories come out through social from you, and I've thought, wow, this is super positive, and I've really enjoyed them. Monina, what are your thoughts here?
I agree with what Kevan and what Martin has already said, and I think that for us, we want to continue to have our community know that they can trust us, and that we'll be a constant through everything, right? So I think it's really important. I love what Kevan said, because we're trying to do something similar with employee advocacy and make sure that in that way of us helping the community, that every single member of our team has an active role in that. And I also love, as everyone has said, really highlighting the good that our content marketers are doing, and whether that's tips in a blog post that they did, or something that they're actually doing within within their cities, that's really helping the efforts right now with the coronavirus crisis. So those two are big ways that we're trying to promote positivity. And, as I mentioned, the coffee chats or coffee breaks, like if we can continue to do stuff like that, where we can provide them an outlet, where they can cry on my shoulder, on our, each other's shoulder, or they can, and that makes them feel better, or if we can help each other with whatever that they need. That's really the ways that we are trying to spread positivity within our community.
Perfect. Neal, what are you doing?
Well, there's a lot of sage advice there, not much that I can add, but I would like to add one aspect, which is the negativity that will appear because of what people are going through, and how you face when that negativity arises in your community, how you face that with a positive. Whether it's, I know recently, just for myself, from an email message, someone saying, all of a sudden I'm getting bombarded with COVID-19 messages, and your use of the English grammar. And I said, I lived in Japan for 15 years. I speak it at my home, so my English is not perfect, but I really appreciate your feedback. And it started actual conversation where the gentleman came back and said, I'm really sorry, I let off my steam on you. Thank you for understanding. And I think that's also part of it, of understanding what people are going through in all of our communication, and making sure that we handle it in a way so that we can bring a negative conversation, even, make it a positive one.
I think that's fantastic advice. Absolutely. Because there are a lot of worked up people out there, and they're going to take it out somewhere. So you guys are heroes being on the front line of that. So here's a curveball for you. Are you guys doing anything to actively connect your audience members to one another right now?
We are. We've been planning some events, webinars and community roundtables, not on social. They're not chats or something like that, but we've been doing events to share information and really get people talking to each other because in our community, a lot of people in our community are hungry for ideas. They're not sure what to do, and learning collaboration has just been such a valuable tool, and people want to do it. So we're happy to be a moderator of that and a facilitator. And those events are happening in the next couple of weeks.
Great. Monina, I imagine the coffee breaks are very similar to that.
Yeah, they are. It's, I had mentioned before, we're also an in-person community. So right now we've had to make a huge pivot. We don't know what the future is going to hold, especially with 2 events that we have this year. We typically have meetups. We had plans to have meetups in different cities throughout the year. That is completely on hold now. Yeah, things have changed. Things have definitely changed, and we're looking for more ways online to be able to have those conversations within our platforms, not just social media, but within our blog or within Slack. We're trying to have even more discussions come out of it, so that they can connect with each other. So yeah, things have completely, kind of changed the strategies that we were looking at for 2020.
Mm-hmm. Are you guys seeing, if it was an in-person event, are you guys seeing just as much, if not more, interaction in the digital communities transfer over?
Well, for the in-person events, we hadn't, one was actually supposed to take place this week. So because we don't know what the plans are going to be, if it will be a virtual event or not. We haven't seen the interactions that we would have seen this week. But those are part of the plans, is that we're trying to find the right platforms that we'd be able to host those conversations real time and host them before and after. And our plans for before and after probably are not as different as they would be in any of our previous years. But, there's so many unknowns right now in the world, and this is part of it for us.
Okay, well, I think we're running out of time. I want to leave a little bit of room here for any final thoughts. So anyone have anything else they want to wrap up with?
I might just mention that I think this is a special time for communities. In the times of crisis, people often turn to other people for comfort and solace. And I think the work that everyone here has done to build communities in our own spaces, I think is really valuable, especially at times like this. So we've kind of taken this message at Buffer less of we're in it together just because there's so many different experiences at the moment, but more that we want to help get through it together, no matter what that might look like for folks. And so having that community space, I think, has been really valuable to feel comfort and solace and a sense of just belonging with other people going through this.
Yeah. I always find there's always like a mic drop, and I feel like that was just it. So thank you. Well, thank you everyone for being here and joining us. Thank you to our guests from Buffer, Content Marketing Institute, the RepTrak Company, and PDCA Social. Thank you to the listeners and viewers out there for joining us. Be sure to wash your hands and have a great day. Bye everyone. Thank you.
Bye.